this. I'm in awe over this. Why didn't they make us in their image? If they were going to come down here and genetically play around with whatever beings might have been on the planet at the time, how come we don't look like they do?
Well, I don't make any claim for them genetically playing around with us.
Okay.
I only, in other words, I present my whole thing as a hypothesis based on the information I've discovered. I don't insist that it's true, although I personally think that it is, but I don't insist upon that.
It sounds like something happened. I don't know exactly what it is, and your theory is as good as any other, and there aren't any other out there. But something happened with this tribe. There's no doubt in my mind about that.
Well, there are many strange and wholly bizarre aspects of this, which are even stranger than what we've discussed. And over the 30 years since I originally published this book, it's actually 30 years ago that the first version of it appeared, and I spent 9 years writing it. I've spent most of my life heavily preoccupied every day thinking about what this all means. And the more I think about it, and all these years later, I've got to say this, the stranger it gets, because there are so many disturbing aspects of it that aren't immediately apparent. You see, the story is so bizarre that it's easy to get carried away by your first impression of it and your second impression and your third impression. But when you've been thinking about it for 39 years, as I have, well, then you get your 100 millionth impression, and the further you go on thinking about it, the implications become just really so bizarre that it would take another book to describe those, and I haven't written it.
Why do you think they left?
Well, that's part of what I'm referring to. Why did they leave? Or did they? If you think about the logistics of physical space travel, you're heavily restricted, and assuming you're capable of it in the first place.
At least the way we think of propulsion.
Well, pardon?
At least the way we think of propulsion right now.
Yes. If you're talking about physical space travel, that is transporting your actual physical body over interstellar distances, you're probably limited to one-way journeys. And the only way it would be possible is you would have to go into suspended animation, like you call it the deep freeze. Mm-hmm. So, and then you'd wake up when you got there. You'd be revived.
Or stumble into a portal. Maybe there's some kind of tunnel that they throughout the universe that they can transport time and space. Maybe they found something like that.
Well, yes. In fact, in the new edition of the Sirius Mystery, I give all the evidence which leads me to believe that the solar system of our Earth and our Sun and the system of Sirius, which is 8.7 light years away, are part of a greater system, which I call the Anubis cell, named in honor of the Egyptian dog-headed god, which is all part of my account of the Egyptian mythology, and Sirius being the dog star. And so I point out that the systems are linked by various means to do with numerical astrophysical quantities and natural constants in such a way that I think that we should look upon our Sun's system and the Sirius system as being astronomically linked as a subunit of the galaxy. And therefore travel between them would be easier than it would normally be between just any old star and any old other star. After all, we are very near neighbors. But I still think that the physical transportation of physical bodies would probably have to go through this suspended animation phase. And so when you asked about why did they leave, and I said, well, maybe they didn't, what I really meant by that was that they probably retreated to the outer edge of our own solar system, parked their vehicle there, and went back into hibernation. Because I'm talking about a visitation that was thousands of years ago, and therefore they would never have gone home. That's the point. The Dogon imply this when they say that they will return, and when they do, it will be called the Day of the Fish, and they will rule from the waters, as they put it. So that has political implications and is what the spooks would call the ultimate security issue.
Absolutely. And we are talking about rising sea levels now, too, aren't we?
Room for more of them.
Exactly. Is it possible that the dolphins of today that are on this planet might be descendants of these beings in some form or fashion?
I wouldn't say descendants, but I would think that the dolphins would be like the pets of these guys.
That's interesting.
You know, like we have dogs, because I'm a great dog lover. You know, I think dogs are nicer than people, and so if you were an Omo, you'd be just as fond of your pet dolphin as I was of my dog before she died.
And you were saying that this story basically is throughout China and other regions of this planet as well.
Yes, and I publish all the pictures, and you see, I've spent many years going to China, and I've written a book called The Genius of China, which is actually part of the Chinese secondary school curriculum, and I'm a visiting professor over there and all that, and so I'm fairly up on my Chinese things, and I've put all of that evidence in there. It's very important to realize that the Chinese, although they were pretty much isolated from the Western traditions, also maintained that civilization was founded by aquatic beings. And they draw pictures of them, and I reproduce these.
That is fascinating. And I would assume the stories somehow echo the Dogon tribe?
Completely, yeah.
Yeah, that's something. That is amazing. It's an incredible story, and I've been wanting to talk with you about that for the last 100 years, I think. And I'm glad we got you on that. Next hour, Robert, we're going to devote our time to the oracles of the dead. An equally stunning story. But in this case, you're there going through some of these tunnels, which you'll explain next hour, what you believe they might be, and how I think modern-day religions have somehow taken what might have been in Greek mythology or Greek episodes and have kind of turned it into something very interesting about Hades and hell. I found that correlation pretty fascinating myself. The work into Oracles of the Dead, how long did it take you to do this one?
Well, in a way, Oracles of the Dead is a very direct outgrowth of the Sirius mystery, which had a lot in it about oracles, but I decided to go much deeper into it. And when I did, I discovered really, really strange things. Everything I do seems to be strange, George, including talking to you, by the way.
You don't do a lot of these lengthy interviews, do you?
Well, if I were asked.
Well, I got to tell you, though, there's pictures of you going down some of those tunnels, and you could not pay me to do that.
Well, if you have claustrophobia, you'd have a problem. I was crawling through tunnels which are only 18 inches high, for hundreds of feet, and it's a bit challenging, but you have to, take a deep breath. Well, in fact, it's difficult to take a deep breath because there's no oxygen down there. That's the other thing. You sort of are in danger of passing out. It's actually pretty dangerous.
I could not do that. Stay with us, Robert. We'll be back with you in just a moment. As I mentioned, his website is linked up at coasttocoastam.com. It's robert-temple.com. And when we come right back, we're going to talk about his latest work, fascinating, equally fascinating, called Oracles of the Dead. I'm George Norrie, back in a moment on Coast to Coast AM.